If they kill Ibrahim Traore, they will kill all Africans. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a chant. It was a line drawn in the sand, a declaration of collective defiance. This isn't just about one man in uniform. It's about what he represents, a continent's final cry for dignity. Captain Ibrahim Traore, the young, unyielding leader of Burkina Faso, has become more than just a president. He's become the embodiment of a revolution long overdue. And now powerful forces, foreign and familiar, want him gone. Ask yourself, why? Why has the West, particularly France and the United States, turned its attention so aggressively toward this quiet corner of West Africa? Why does a man who builds roads, educates youth, and removes foreign soldiers suddenly become the most dangerous man in Africa? The answer, whispered in dusty streets and shouted in packed town halls, is unsettling in its simplicity. He disrupted the system. Traore took office and wasted no time. He removed a puppet leader, one hand-picked and applauded by the very nations now seeking his downfall. Then he did the unthinkable. He shut down all French military bases across Burkina Faso, sending their troops back home and their influence with them. He rewrote the nation's mining contracts, increasing the state's share of profits and ending decades of economic pillaging. Just 3 moves. And with them, the walls of neo-colonial control began to tremble. But it wasn't just policy. It was intent. Captain Traore didn't ask for permission. He didn't negotiate with the puppeteers. He acted. That alone made him an enemy. The West, unable to control him, chose to vilify him. U.S. General Michael Langley accused him of harboring instability. Langley even made a suspicious visit to Ivory Coast, sparking whispers of a covert plan, another page from an old playbook. And so once again the crosshairs turned toward an African leader who dared to lead for Africa. Only this time, something changed. Africa didn't flinch. Across villages and cities from Ouagadougou to Bamako, from Nairobi to Lagos, the youth began to stir. No longer silent, they saw through the lies the narrative spun to justify intervention. One by one they rose, not with guns, but with voices, not in chaos, but in clarity. This wasn't propaganda. This was pain. This was memory. They remembered Gaddafi, SANKARA, Lumumba, leaders who tried to lift Africa and were buried by bullets wrapped in diplomacy. And so a fire caught, not a violent blaze, but a steady, burning refusal. The kind that builds beneath skin, in song, in silence, in every classroom where a child hears that Traore is making roads, not with foreign aid but with their own hands. The kind of fire that makes a mother say she'll stand in front of a bullet, if it means her child will grow up in a sovereign nation. This is the storm before the storm, the fire before the march. And it begins here, with a question not of if, but of when the world will understand that Africa is no longer asking for permission to exist. It's demanding the right to live, to lead, and to protect those who finally dare to fight back. Now the spotlight turns to a nation rebuilding from within. But what's happening on the ground? Who are the people behind this transformation? And how is an entire country being built not by corporations but by its own children? Stay with us, because what you're about to see in Part 2 will change everything you thought you knew about Africa. When outsiders talk about Burkina Faso, they rarely speak of hope. They mention poverty, conflict, instability, never progress. But something extraordinary is happening here, something so powerful it threatens to redefine not just a nation, but a narrative imposed for generations. While the world debates headlines, Captain Ibrahim Traore has been quietly building a revolution, not with speeches, but with roads. Not with foreign aid, but with self-reliance. Not with empty promises, but with bulldozers, bricks in the hands of his people. Let's rewind. From 1960, the year Burkina Faso gained independence from French colonial rule, until the day Traore took office, the country had managed to construct just over 3,000 kilometers of paved road. That's more than 6 decades. 60 years of presidents, ministers, donors, conferences. and all it amounted to was a mere 3,000 kilometers. Compare that to Botswana, another African nation that reached the same milestone immediately after the British left. Why the discrepancy? The answer, once again, points to who truly benefited from Burkina's stagnation, and it wasn't the people. Now enter Captain Ibrahim Traore. A soldier, yes, but also something more rare, a visionary with no patience for excuses. Under his leadership, the new government didn't wait for foreign investors. They didn't send in grant proposals or plead with the IMF. They bought the equipment themselves. Trucks, pavers, cranes, graders, all paid for and shipped in. Some came from Ghana, some from regional partners. But make no mistake, the initiative was entirely Burkinabe. This wasn't about building roads. It was about taking back the tools of nationhood, and Traore didn't stop there. Instead of outsourcing these projects to international companies, with inflated budgets and years of delays, the government chose a radically different route. Do it themselves. The state became the developer, the operator, the builder. Ministries were given mandates. Military engineers were assigned to infrastructure, brigades. But more importantly, youth from every corner of the country were trained, not just as laborers, but as machine operators, site managers, logistics planners, and safety officers. This wasn't just construction, this was education, this was empowerment. Picture it. Young men and women, some of them fresh out of high school, some with no formal schooling at all, learning how to maneuver heavy machinery, read technical blueprints, mix concrete, lay asphalt. In other nations, this is done behind closed doors, hidden behind multinational walls. In Burkina Faso, it was done in the open, by the people, for the people. One of Africa's most influential YouTubers, visited the country and couldn't believe what he saw. "I am here and I'm seeing roads being constructed," he said with awe. "I am here and I'm seeing factories being built. I am here and I'm seeing entrepreneurs coming out saying this is the first time they feel proud of their country." That pride? It wasn't manufactured. It was earned, brick by brick. According to the plan is to construct 5,000 kilometers of paved road per year. Think about that. Burkina Faso, once stuck at 3,000 kilometer total after 60 years, is now planning to exceed that amount every single year. That's not just growth. That's a national rebirth. It's an act of rebellion against the narrative that Africa must always wait, beg, and borrow to move forward. And it's visible. Videos flood social media showing convoys of construction equipment rolling through rural towns, bulldozers carving paths where there were none, youth in uniforms bearing the country's flag, working shoulder to shoulder, laughing, sweating, building. No third-party contractors dragging their feet, no elite class siphoning budgets, just citizens reclaiming their right to develop. It's hard to overstate how symbolic this is. Roads in Africa aren't just about transport. They're about access to education, to healthcare, to trade. For decades, their absence served as a quiet form of control. No roads meant no schools. No roads meant no clinics. No roads meant no escape. And those in power, both inside and outside the continent, knew it. But now, roads are being laid like veins across the nation, pumping life into forgotten villages. And this is what terrifies the global establishment. Because a self-built nation doesn't just challenge colonial residue, it makes their presence obsolete. Burkina Faso is no longer a place to be pitied. It is becoming a blueprint. There's something uniquely powerful about watching your own country rise, not from foreign investment, but from the will of its people. That kind of growth doesn't just move trucks, it moves minds. It instills belief. Young Burkinabés are no longer dreaming of fleeing to Europe. They're dreaming of owning a part of the future they're building. And Traore's model is spreading. Activists from across Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Mali, are looking to Burkina Faso not with envy, but with resolve. They see a path forward. One that doesn't rely on aid packages. One that doesn't come with strings. One that is built by African hands, protected by African hearts. Of course, there are challenges. Paving 5,000 kilometers per year isn't easy. Supply chains are strained, equipment breaks down, Corruption still lurks in corners. But for the first time, the country isn't waiting for solutions to be flown in. It's creating them from within, and that makes all the difference. There's a phrase that's been echoing in the chants of the youth. The country is under construction. It's not just about roads, it's about identity, dignity, ownership. It's a quiet but thunderous statement to the world. We are no longer just a project. We are the architects. So next time someone tells you nothing good comes out of Burkina Faso, tell them to look again. Tell them to see the convoys of machines driven by teenagers who never thought they'd work a paying job. Tell them to look at villages that are no longer isolated, but connected, physically and psychologically. Tell them to speak to the woman who now walks on paved ground to get to a clinic her child will survive in. Tell them to look, not at what was stolen, but at what's being rebuilt, because this story is far from over. In fact, it's only just begun. What happens when history repeats itself? Not once, but over and over, each time more brutal than the last. What happens when leaders who dare to dream for Africa are buried before those dreams can breathe? The names are etched in blood. Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Muammar Gaddafi, each one a visionary, each one a target, each one eliminated, not by chance but by design. And now, the whispers have returned. A new name has entered the crosshairs, Captain Ibrahim Traore. But something is different this time, something louder, something rising. It's not just voices, it's a collective vow. A generational scream that echoes through alleyways and classrooms, through smartphones and street protests. A young man from Kenya, an activist named Dennis Wangala, stepped forward not as a politician, not as a diplomat, but as a messenger for the continent's soul. And what he delivered was not a speech. It was a warning. Standing before the world with nothing but his voice, Dennis made it clear. If you dare touch Ibrahim Traore, Africa will not forgive. This time, we are watching. This time, we are ready. Wangala didn't speak like someone reading a prepared statement. He spoke like a brother who'd buried too many siblings, like someone haunted by the images of Gaddafi being dragged through dirt, of Sankara lying in a pool of betrayal. He said what others were too afraid to say. The West doesn't fear chaos in Africa. It fears Africa united. The speech hit with the weight of a continent's truth. Ibrahim Traore, Dennis said, is not just a leader. He's the continuation of a dream they tried to kill in Libya, a dream they tried to bury in Burkina Faso before. But this time, it's not just one man carrying it. It's an entire generation. Traore came to power not with fanfare but in a time of collapse. The country was choking. No water, no hospitals, no jobs. People were dying, silently. And into that silence stepped a young man with no billionaire backers, no Western approval, no multinational handshakes. Just a fire in his chest and a promise on his lips. Burkina Faso will rise, not with foreign hands, but with its own. This promise is what makes him dangerous, and Wangala knew exactly what the threat was. You want to arrest Traore? He scoffed. Try it. He pointed directly to General Michael Langley of the United States, calling him out by name. Don't talk. Come and arrest him, then see what happens next. His voice didn't shake. He wasn't bluffing. Because the youth of Africa have finally seen the pattern. It's always the same. A leader dares to speak against the IMF, dares to reject military occupation, dares to question the currency monopoly of the West. And suddenly, the headlines shift. He becomes unstable, authoritarian, a threat to democracy. The same script, the same setup, the same bullet, over and over. They killed Gaddafi because he dreamed of one currency for Africa, one army, one continent. He built schools, hospitals, roads, and made Libya a place where no one paid rent, where newlyweds received housing stipends, where education and healthcare were guaranteed. Too much independence, too much dignity. And then, he was gone. They killed Sankara because he told Burkina Faso it didn't need France to survive. That aid was a new chain. that Africans could grow what they eat, build what they live in, and run what they own. He refused to live in presidential mansions. He sold government cars and invested in bicycles for public workers. He called out corruption in broad daylight. He was beloved. So they shot him by those who called themselves his allies. Wangala's voice cracked with rage when he brought up those names, not just because of the assassinations, but because of the silence that followed them. "Where were our presidents?" he asked. "Where were the African leaders when Gaddafi was lynched, when Sankara was betrayed?" They were quiet, mum. The word echoed like a slap, mum. "Not this time." Traore, Wangala said, represents the spirit of both Sankara and Gaddafi. He is the son of their legacy, the living embodiment of everything they hope to pass down. And the youth, this generation, will not let that legacy be stolen again. The fear is real, not fear of violence, but fear of another broken promise, another leader taken in the night, another country plunged into chaos just when it had begun to hope. Because this time people have tasted what real leadership looks like. They've seen roads being built. They've seen equipment bought with state funds, not donor money. They've seen jobs created, not by NGOs, but by the state, by their state. And they know that if Traore falls, it may take another generation to rebuild that faith. Wangala wasn't just speaking for Burkina Faso. He was speaking for every young African who's watched their country struggle, despite being rich, in gold, diamonds, oil, for every child who memorized colonial flags before learning their national anthem, for every teenager whose leader lives in Europe while their school crumbles, for every village still drinking from the same river where they bathe, because money never seems to reach them. And he delivered his final words like a verdict. Enough is enough. A line that wasn't just spoken, it was earned. Through years of exploitation, through betrayals signed in boardrooms, through decades of broken treaties and empty development projects. Enough. He called upon women to rise. Mothers, grandmothers, those who give life to stand and protect the one man who might secure their children's future. And they are rising. In the streets of Ouagadougou, you now see them, marching, chanting, singing songs of revolution. Not with guns, but with conviction. Not in fear, but in love. Because to protect Traore is to protect possibility. And perhaps the most haunting part of Wangala's warning was this. If they kill Traore, they will have to kill all Africans. Because this time, we're not dying in silence. We're not letting the West rule through blood anymore. You have your countries. Mind your own business. Let Africans solve African problems. It's not just anger, it's awareness. They know now that Western intervention rarely comes without conditions, that peacekeeping is often profit-keeping, that diplomacy sometimes means destruction, and they are done pretending. This moment, this speech, was not a viral clip. It was a marker in the sand, a rallying cry not just for Burkina Faso, but for an entire continent that has begun to remember its worth. So if you're watching from afar, don't mistake this for noise. This is not chaos. This is clarity. This is the sound of 1.3 billion people realizing that their chains were illusions all along. And Captain Traore? He stands in the middle of it, not as a savior, but as a spark. The question now is simple. Will we protect him before they snuff that spark out again? Or will we once more write history in blood only to mourn what we could have saved? In part 4, the fire spreads. The youth unite. The warnings turn into action. And the world begins to understand just how serious this movement is. Stay tuned, because what comes next will shake everything. They killed Gaddafi. They killed Sankara. They tried to kill the idea of an Africa that could stand on its own. And for a while it worked. For a while, we were quiet. We watched as our leaders bowed their heads, signed papers they didn't read, and traded away the birthrights of millions for briefcases of borrowed power. But something has shifted. A spark has become a flame. A whisper has become a storm. And this time, we fight back. Denis Wangala's words weren't just a warning. They were a trigger, the kind that sets off chain reactions across borders. From the shores of Kenya to the deserts of Mali, from Accra's streets to the mountains of Ethiopia, a single truth echoed. Africa is done begging, because the betrayal has gone on too long. The manipulation is no longer hidden. We see the traps now. The IMF doesn't rescue economies, it enslaves them. They offer lifelines with nooses hidden in the fine print. One loan, two loans, suddenly your currency is worthless and your hospitals are being sold to foreign investors. You can't feed your people without permission. You can't educate your youth unless it fits their development plan. You can't say no, because the price of resistance is regime change. And still they ask why we are angry. We are angry because we have gold, and yet we borrow. We have oil, and yet we import fuel. We have land, but we rent it out for peanuts. We are angry because every time a leader dares to say no more, a plane lands in a neighboring capital. A general suddenly shows up with accusations. Sanctions appear overnight. Western journalists rewrite our reality and call it truth. So when Captain Ibrahim Traore rose to power, not through the ballot, but through bravery, many held their breath. Would he follow the same path? Would he end up another signature on another dotted line? He didn't. He did what few have ever dared. He looked the West in the eye and said, "You will not control us anymore." He said no to military bases that served foreign interests. He said no to mining contracts that looted without mercy. He said no to the endless cycle of debt and dependency. And then he went one step further. He acted. He removed the puppet regime. He sent foreign soldiers home. He seized back control of Burkina Faso's resources. He paved roads, built factories, trained the youth, not with UN grants or Western consultants, but with national funds and national pride. For the first time in decades, Burkinabés could feel the earth shift beneath their feet. And it wasn't from bombs. It was from bulldozers. From progress. And that's when the fear set in. Not in Africa, but in the halls of Washington, in the boardrooms of Paris, in the quiet corridors of Brussels. Because if it could happen in Burkina Faso, it could happen anywhere. The West thrives on a divided Africa. Fragmented, poor, needy, easy to manipulate. That's why leaders like Traore are a problem. Not because they are violent, not because they are radical, but because they are effective. Because they remind Africa that it is capable, without approval, without aid, without compromise. And that's why the youth are rising now, not out of rage alone, but out of recognition. We've seen the playbook. We know what comes next. The defamation campaigns, the whispers of coup plots, the sanctions, the humanitarian concern. That always seems to end in tanks rolling through capitals. But this time we are ready. This time the youth are not waiting for marching orders. They are organizing, online and offline. They are sharing stories, building movements, holding local leaders accountable. They are saying, if they touch Traore, it won't be just Burkina Faso that bleeds. It will be the entire continent that burns, because Traore is not just a president. He is a line in the sand, and for the first time, women have joined the front lines, not just as supporters, but as protectors. In marketplaces, mothers chant his name. In villages, grandmothers vow to block roads with their bodies if necessary. In classrooms, young girls are taught that true independence is not a gift. It's a fight, one that must be renewed every generation. And still the Western media ignores it. They twist the story. They say Traore is dangerous, that he threatens stability, that he is too young, too bold, too unpredictable. But we ask, stability for who? For the corporations still mining our gold while our schools fall apart? For the officials who fly to Europe for treatment while our hospitals are empty? For the peacekeepers who keep no peace but guard pipelines and mineral rights? We see through it now. The lie of partnership, the illusion of democracy, the myth of humanitarianism. If they cared about Africa, they would have built with us, not on us. If they respected us, they would listen, not dictate. And so, we are building something new, something terrifying to those who have always held the reins. A united Africa, one military, one currency, one voice. This idea, once crushed in Libya, once betrayed in the jungles of Congo, once ridiculed in Paris, is back, stronger, louder, sharper, because this time it is not coming from presidents, it is coming from the people. We want our own financial institutions, our own defense, our own media. We want to tell our stories, not through their lens but through our truth. We want to trade with each other, teach each other, heal each other. And to do that, we must protect the spark, because if they silence Traore, they will silence hope, and we will not let that happen. So here is our message to the West. Back off. Mind your own business. Solve your own crises. Stop using African leaders as scapegoats for your failing global order. We are not your resource pit. We are not your refugee problem. We are not your experiment. We are Africa, and we are rising. If you dare try what you did to Sankara, to Gaddafi, try it again with Traore. You will not face silence. You will face a united front. You will face a generation that was raised on fire, not fear, because this time we are not asking for change. We are becoming it. And if you still don't believe us, just wait. The next chapter is already being written, in the villages, on the roads, in the factories, in the classrooms, with each paved kilometer, with every young mind awakened, with every flag waved not out of loyalty to the past, but hope for the future. This time, we won't let them win. This time Africa fights back. We are not scared of you. Come and arrest Traore, then you'll see what happens next. That challenge wasn't whispered. It wasn't hidden in some back room or buried in bureaucratic language. It was declared openly, boldly on the world stage. Because this isn't the Africa of yesterday. This is a new Africa, one that has watched, learned, and remembered. And now the continent is responding with clarity, unity, and fire. Captain Ibrahim Traore is not just Burkina Faso's president. He is a mirror reflecting everything the youth of Africa have been searching for. A leader who doesn't beg, doesn't borrow, and doesn't bow. A man who has the audacity to believe that Africa can govern itself, build itself, and defend itself. That belief alone has made him a target. But it has also made him a symbol of resistance, a symbol of renewal, a symbol of the reckoning to come. In Traore's rise, we've found something deeper than politics. We've found a test of whether Africa is ready to stand when standing comes with a cost. Whether we are willing to protect the few leaders who risk everything to break the cycle of debt, corruption, and quiet submission. And whether we, as a generation, are brave enough to say, never again will they kill one of ours in silence. Because silence has been their greatest weapon. They didn't just kill Gaddafi, they erased his legacy. They didn't just silence Sankara, they erased his vision from textbooks. They didn't just assassinate Lumumba, they scattered his story like ash. And for decades we accepted it. We whispered, we mourned, but we moved on. Not this time. This time, when they slander Traore in foreign press, we push back. When generals speak recklessly of arrest, we respond with resolve. When foreign powers plot in shadows, we shine the light of exposure. From the mothers in the marketplace to the tech-savvy youth on Twitter, from African journalists on the ground to voices across the diaspora, we are all watching, and we are no longer afraid. What's happening in Burkina Faso is not isolated. It is not an exception. It is a front line, a battle for narrative, for power, for destiny. Traore is not the only one rising, but he is the one they fear most. Why? Because he's proven that change doesn't need to be imported, that dignity doesn't come from donors, that the youth, when awakened, are not just protesters, they are builders, fighters, defenders of a future stolen for too long, and that's where you come in. If you've made it this far, If you feel the pulse of something shifting, know this: you are now a part of it. This movement isn't waiting for permission. It's already underway. Whether you're in New York, Nairobi, Lagos, or London, this story touches you. It challenges you, and it invites you to choose a side. Will you be silent if they move against him? Will you look away if they try again to make an example out of a young man with a vision? Or will you rise, not with violence, but with voice, with visibility, with truth? Africa is no longer just rising. It is remembering. It is reclaiming. And this, what you're witnessing now, is just the beginning. Because the next move, it's ours. And in the next episode, we go deeper, into the shadows. Who really wants Ibrahim Traore dead? What deals are being made behind closed doors? What forces are already in motion to stop him before his dream becomes unstoppable? Stay with us. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Because one voice can spark a movement. One truth can shake an empire. And one generation, this generation, can rewrite history. See you in the next chapter.